All right, welcome to the Wednesday stream. We're going to maybe write a book live, do some music creation live, maybe demo some guitars live, and just have a great time interacting and talking to each other. Hope you guys are having a great one. Let me go ahead and link the Patreon. I'm going to turn the music down just a little bit. Let me link the Patreon. There's new stuff there. Usually there's a rotating book. I do occasionally have some free stuff that shows up every month or so. So you can, of course, check that out. So I'm going to go ahead and link that. It helps support the channel and all the content that I do. Usually around 8 videos a month, 4 to 8 live streams, writing the books live. You get free books as part of that. Everybody gets a copy of Keys to Prolific Creativity, my creativity manual, basically on how to arrange your life so that you can complete projects. So yeah, please do check that out. That's another way you can support me. You can also tip me on Ko-Fi, Subscribestar, all of those wonderful things and places. Put out a video today called The Wrong Side of History. That was kind of prompted by a really good comment that I had seen on X, a good tweet, post, whatever. Somebody speaking on X. It got me thinking about a lot of the cycles of history with art. One of the big mistakes that people make when looking at history, and I think this is very much the case with the arts, is that there is, in the progression of styles and things that change in the arts, that there is a growth, that things are actually just getting better all the time. And I think this comes from, if you look at art history, say, in the 19th century, you will see art kind of building up complexity. And if not becoming better, becoming more grandiose and more complex and pushing the boundaries of what you can do with the tonal system. So in that sense, there is a growth from like the romantic into the post-romantic. But the more you know about music, the more you'll see the transitions between various styles in music to not be some sort of getting better, some sort of growth in complexity in general. In fact, what we tend to have is a reduction in complexity followed by a growth in complexity, followed by a reduction in complexity, right? We have these cycles of things building up and then things kind of needing to get taken back down to their bare elements, their basic ideas. So I'll just use music as an example because that's really my greatest area of expertise when it comes to history is music history. So the earliest music that we have written records of, okay, well, let me qualify that. The earliest music that we have written records of, we're actually not really sure how to read that. That would be like Greek music, ancient Greek music. But we're going to start with the medieval because that's when people are able to develop forms of music notation that allows them to write down the music. Really important. And this was important in the medieval period. It was important in the Middle Ages because we had missionaries going out and Christianizing all of Europe and beyond. But the Christianization, what started to happen with that is a need to standardize the Mass. The Mass has appeared in many forms and has been revised many times over the centuries. People who are big Latin Mass people they're often just not aware of the history of the Mass prior to the Counter-Reformation, to the Trinity Mass, where we kind of set the Latin Mass as this is what it is. Masses were done differently in different parts of Europe and in different languages, depending on what you might be looking at, right? Like not just the Greek or the Slavonic versus the Latin, but you might have different amounts of vernacular and things like that. So the standardization of the Mass was a process that happened throughout the Middle Ages. And part of that was being able to transmit the way the songs should be sung, the chant that the songs are going to be using. In the West, this took the form of pneumatic notation, and in the East, it continued to be transmitted mostly orally. But pneumatic notation, if you go back and look, if you're an experienced musician, prepare to get confused, very confused looking at pneumatic notation. If you went to seminary a long time ago in the Catholic Church, you probably understand a lot of pneumatic notation, because pneumatic notation itself would get standardized. But what we had back then was monophony, one line. But we needed to write that down so that the chants could be performed properly across Christendom. So we invented a form of notation so that we could preserve music. And that's the first really preserved music that we have, are those neumes from the Middle Ages. Once we get into the Renaissance, we start to have polyphony. We have a transitional form called organum, which is moving in intervals like octaves and fifths, voices. This is all vocal music, by the way. The only kind of secular music we have from the Middle Ages is lute music, because again, they invented a writing system, tablature, which looks very different from guitar tabs that you would deal with today with numbers. And it's a bunch of letters, right? The letters correspond to what frets you're going to press. So we're able to, because the instrument, we still have lutes, we have guitars, we're able to take that and realize that music. But that's mostly kind of a sidetrack. We do have a real growth in complexity. Through the Middle Ages, art gets a lot more complex into the Renaissance, to where it reaches this height of really intense complexity and beauty. You have the Sistine Chapel being a highly complex work of visual art. You have high Gothic cathedrals, which are covered in statuary to the point of no surface not being decorated somehow with some of these cathedrals. This is really the Renaissance at this point. A lot of people think of cathedrals as medieval, but if you look at most of the big cathedrals, you realize that they're completed in what we think of as the Renaissance. And the idea is the ethos of the Renaissance penetrates into the High Middle Ages and takes it over, kind of takes it from the medievalist view through the Black Plague into this Renaissance ethos that we think of. And that's where we also see like growth of authorship and things like that. We see a lot more authors attributing themselves, signing their paintings, signing their copies that they did in a book, putting their initials or whatever on the piece of music that they wrote, or signing the music that they wrote. That becomes really everyone starts to do it after a while, whereas it's rarer in the Middle Ages. All this complexity. The Baroque, you can't get more complex than like Renaissance music. So the Baroque is very complex, but in a different direction. Instead of polyphony, what we have is counterpoint, which is intricate relationships between voices, various melodies moving against each other. So counterpoint is the dominant compositional method of the Baroque, and it's very complex to write counterpoint. It's very difficult, and if you've never taken a class in counterpoint or read a book about it or tried to do it yourself, there's a lot of rules that are about strictly managing the relationship between those voices so that you don't produce anything that sounds bad. It takes a lot of skill to do that. The classical, what we have really following the Baroque is this little short period that we call the Galant. And the Galant was a major reduction in complexity. Comparing the Galant to the High Baroque, comparing like, say, Leopold Mozart or even Haydn to Bach is just infinitely more complex, really, right? His music is just on a different level. It wasn't popular at that time. They wanted tinkly music, they wanted pretty melodies, they wanted that sort of thing. So what gave way was a simplification of the art. So did the art progress to new heights? In some ways, but it did that by first taking things down to their bare components. Once starting from the Galant, we have the rise of what's called homophony, which is going to be melodies against chords. Homophony is the dominant form of composition technique and texture, I suppose you'd say, that you hear in most Western music now. So It was there in the Baroque, but that became the dominant form of how you would write music, is you'd have a single beautiful melody, and then you'd have accompaniment of some kind that was simple, designed to support the melody, not to be particularly interesting on its own. So all the way up through most of the corporate music that you have in the 20th century jazz, it's going to be homophony. So the idea that art always gets better or more complex, it's just not true. What we end up with coming out of the classical, which is very ruled by conventions, forms, strict formality with the way a symphony is written, with the way homophony is performed, with what chords you use, with what theory you use. You have those boundaries getting pushed in the Romantic period. You have tempo variations. You start to have a lot of things that move into the music to make it more emotional and more creative and give the composer more leeway to do new and interesting things. Well, you can't get any crazier than Wagner or Strauss or some of these post-romantic composers. You reach a real height with Wagner. Like, it can't get any better than Wagner while doing that thing. Wagner uses everything. He uses every technique prior to his life. He uses counterpoint. He has polyphony. He has beautiful homophony. He pushes the tonal system to its maximum limits and breaks them and changes keys all the time and plays with dissonance in all kinds of new ways. You can't go any further than Wagner in that area. So the next generation of composers responded by simplifying things again. You had the Impressionist movement. The Impressionist movement was about making things simple, giving the impression of an idea and not really highly technical exercises. And this is true in painting. The idea of being able to see the strokes of the paint was a thing that you didn't want in the 19th century, early 19th century. And then by the Impressionists, it's like, no, we're letting you see the brush. We're letting you see the brush strokes. And then in the 20th century, you have things like 12-tone music emerge. And primalism, there's a bunch of styles. But all of them, in a way, are a reaction to Wagner, as I view it. Keep in mind that, like, Stravinsky was a student of Rimsky-Korsakov. So his teacher was one of the high Russian composers for the post-romantic style. And so his reaction to that was to do things that were very different. Not to do what Korsakov did better, but to do it differently in new and different ways. So the music of the 20th century, the art music, what we would call, tended to simplify a lot, and then to do things that were really weird, like 12-tone music, just abandons the tonal system and has a logical construction of equality between 12 pitches, and that's what you get with Arnold Schoenberg, Anton Webern. You have it even move into guys like Milton Babbitt that would serialize everything, including like tempo and note value. Everything would be serialized so that the compositional process was more like an algorithm. And so you have to wonder, like, is Milton Babbitt a composer? It's a good question. So no, art has not progressed in these like nice little ways. And if you look at visual art, I think there's a decline in technical quality in the 18th century. Now, this may not be a super popular position, but it has to do with the style that was being pursued in the 18th century, where you were trying to kind of show your subject in a more idealized light. So you get these faces that are not realistic all over the place in 18th century art. And then in the 19th century, you have a return to more realistic faces, but they're using other techniques to try to exaggerate the emotion of those faces. So I feel like there's a step down. We simplify the art a little bit in the 18th century, and then we make it more complex. So anyway, the point is, this illusion of progress, it's not real in art. Things happen in cycles. Things get really complex, they get really simple. They get really complex, they get really simple. And depending on what you think is good or bad, these changes can be good or bad. If you feel like the complexity is too much, like it's incomprehensible, it's bombastic, it's overwhelming, then you need simplicity. And if the simplicity is boring, then the complexity is good. You need complexity. And if I were to maybe make a hypothesis, I feel like there's always some point where, like, There's a height to be reached with one ethos, and then something has to change. We have to change the focus of the ethos for the art to continue being novel and interesting to people. Once you've heard the densest contrapuntal stuff you can imagine, you might get bored of it and you want something different that's maybe a beautifully framed melody or something like that. And yeah, I think you can see this with all the arts. A Baroque literature still a developing form, right? It'd be the comparison of like John Milton versus the invention of the novel appears in the classical period. The novel as we think of it today is a narrative structured novel. And it was mostly written to entertain middle-class women, by the way. Right? Frances Burney really pioneered that form, and that became the dominant form of literature really up to today, and not so much poetry and things like that. Interesting to think about, you know. Let's take a look at the chat, see what's up with the chat. What's up, Adrian? Hope you're doing great. 440 hertz tuning standard was a relatively recent addition to the music standardization by American manufacturers. Absolutely, and there was different tuning systems across the pond too. So this is one thing you will discover if you ever decide to get deep into Baroque music or any early music, any music prior to the 20th century even, is what tuning standard are you going to use? Now, what's really cool is I can show you something here in Ableton, whatever you want to call it. You can actually change your tuning system in Ableton now, which is really cool. Yeah, you can drop in a tuning system and it'll automatically do it for you. So you can work in Indian tunings or whatever weird things you imagine now, which is great, really cool. We used to have to do that, like if we wanted something to be in, you know, a mathematically correct tuning. There's different ones. There's like just intonation, and there's a couple different ones that adjust those intervals a little bit. You'd have to manually tune your piano, and you'd have to have an expert tuner do it. You know? So that's what we'd have to go manually tune the harpsichord. So yeah, if you're playing Baroque music, you'll figure out they tuned a lot lower. They didn't have steel strings, you know. They didn't have steel wrapped silk strings or nylon strings or composite strings like we have on violins and guitars today. They couldn't withstand as much tension. They were made of cattle gut and you know, maybe wire wrapped cattle gut. So their materials were a lot more delicate. In some ways, they're more robust. Like gut strings can last a really long time, but they weren't able to withstand those large amounts of tension. So you would tune lower. My lute tuning is usually A360, I think. So it's basically a whole step down from normal tuning. 390 is like a half step, and 360 is like another half step. So if you were to tune your guitar down a whole step, that's what Baroque guitar actually would sound like. That's what lute would sound like. That's the tuning system that you would have used in the 17th and 18th century. Are those lower tunings, because the strings couldn't hold that much tension. We actually couldn't even tune a piano up that high until we invented the steel soundboard, like a steel framed piano or a cast iron framed piano in the 19th century. When you had wood framed pianos, pianofortes, like what was, you know, played in the late 18th century, early 19th century, they have a much different tone. If you ever get to hear one, I love the tone a lot more. Hey, dog. I didn't close this door all the way. What's up, little pup? Are you worried about something? Howky, can you call Hobo? Go on, pup. Dog just wanted to say hi. So, yeah, you'll find that with Baroque music. You have to tune low to get the correct sound. And lots of people play instruments from that period, and they'll tune them up to 440, but like if you wanted to sound correct, you're going to use a lower tuning. Things were quieter. people's hearing was less damaged. And so one of the things that could tend to happen is if you're playing a historic instrument with historic tuning and strings, you'll find that it's the emphasis is really on this kind of big bass. There's this kind of sonic, I don't know, there's a less penetrating sound to everything because the high end, you lose a little bit of that high end and that volume, that powerful volume in the mid range with strings that happens when you tune them really tight. You get this kind of hoom sound. Things are softer, but they're also more mellow. And to me, I think the sound of real Baroque instruments, I think it's a very pleasant sound, especially strings. So if you hear a string orchestra that's using Baroque tuning or some sort of historically informed performance, you may end up really liking the tone. It has a much less aggressive high end. The treble is clear, but it's not as penetrating, and especially the mid range. I think things feel more balanced, to be honest. A little bit more balanced. Like if you have a string quartet, for instance, it's easy to lose the viola. The viola can get almost lost in the texture sometimes because of how powerful the mid-range of the cello can be. All of a sudden, when the cello's tuned low, it feels like a bass instrument. It sounds like a bass instrument. That C is really low. That low, the fourth course or the fourth string on a cello. And then, of course, you have instruments like the gamba, which looks like a fretted cello and is played with a bow. And those are really cool instruments. And they are bass instruments. They have a big bass sound. The fundamental feels more present when you tune low. That's why a lot of metal guys like to tune low, I think, is that Sabbath started doing it out of necessity because Tony Iommi couldn't press the strings. He had an injury where he'd lost the tips of a couple of his fingers and he couldn't physically press the strings correctly. So they tuned everything down to like C sharp. And then they figured out, whoa, there's like this big rumbling fundamental sound that sounded really good for their music. And they went with it. So a lot of metal guys like it for that reason. Then I notice metal guys go the other direction, which is they tune low, but they want it to be tight. And I'm like, if you want it to be that tight, you should just maybe play in a higher tuning, play in E flat or E, rather than like drop A and trying to be super tight at drop A. I got to get a bigger string to get that tight sound at drop A. It's like maybe you get the tighter sound with the higher tuning, you know? Anyway. I've been thinking a lot about Berserk recently. If the story was handed to you to finish, how would you write the ending? I don't know. I would be tempted to say we shouldn't write an ending. I think it's okay for works to be incomplete because it's tied to the author. Maybe things take on a life of their own and people want to see how a story resolves or how the characters finish a character arc, but to me, art is so tied to authorship. I can't. It would be fan fiction. Like, what would my fan fiction ending be? He kills Griffith. That's how it has to end. Like, he has to kill Griffith. Griffith has to see the horror of what he's embraced at the end. He has to have a moment of clarity. He has to beg. I would have him like beg Guts to kill him or something. Or he would say, you know, there's always these cycles and you're not changing anything. And Guts would say something like, I'm changing something for me now, and that's all that matters. You know, I can't fix all of history, but I can fix things right now. This is true with the shift to neo-prog like Marillion in the 80s, because Tales from Topographic Oceans had come out already. Hard to get more epic after that, yeah. Same thing with Yes, right? Like people want to, I think actually, I mean, my controversial opinion is Yes's best album is actually 90125. It's their pop album from the early 80s. Because it's the pop songs, they're super catchy, but underneath them and infused with them and in between them are all of those prog elements from the 70s. So Close to the Edge is great, but where do you go after Close to the Edge? Right? Where do you go after an album like that? It's like this pinnacle album. You have to try new and different things. People didn't like Drama. I think Drama was actually pretty good, but I think 90125 was the rebirth of the band. I know Steve Howe wasn't in the band. It was Trevor Rabin, but like it was a great album because they had to do something different at that point. And they were even all trying to do something different. They were trying to do a different band called Cinema, and it ended up being Yes. Once they had got everybody in the band, and they're like, okay, we realize this band is almost entirely, it's just Yes without Steve Howe at this point. So it's Yes, and Steve Howe's doing Asia with other guys from Yes and King Crimson. What a great time, the early 80s. You had such great rock music. You had Genesis. You had Genesis Mark II with Phil Collins, and you had Peter Gabriel still doing stuff with Phil Collins, and you had Yes and Asia, and you had Rush. You had such amazing prog music in the early 80s. I feel like there was a real rebirth. At the 70s, they took it to one extreme, like with King Crimson and stuff, and then I feel like in the 80s, they took it to like, okay, we're taking all those lessons, but we're going to make focused, catchy songs with it, and boom, I think it was just magic. All those early 80s prog albums are just, they hit hard. They're great. You think people's perception might have been warped by getting so used to hearing music as a pre-recording? Yes, not even including headphones. Headphones have caused widespread loss of hearing ability. Absolutely. Yes, what a great topic. Okay, let me read this again. You think people's perception might have been warped by getting so used to hearing music as a pre-recording, that is, recorded music, a record, an MP3 or whatever. Not including headphones. Headphones have caused widespread loss of hearing ability. They haven't just caused loss of hearing ability. They've caused a destruction in the quality of recording. Let me pontificate on this a little bit because it's an amazing topic. So yes, people's perceptions are warped. I went and saw Black Sabbath some years ago with Dio, and they came out. Man, what a great band. Those guys were at the absolute top of their skill game in the 2000s. They were old at that point, but they were super experienced. They're not missing a beat. They know what they're doing. Every guy in that band, Vinny Appice, Ronnie James Dio, Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi, best rock band in the world, in my opinion. And they were so good live. It was one of the best live shows I've ever seen in my life. And it was great because it came on after Alice Cooper. And Alice Cooper had this wild stage show where he like hung himself, which was crazy. But Black Sabbath was like, it was just those four guys walked out on stage and just played their asses off. But there was a ton of improvisation. Tony Iommi is a blues or jazz guitarist at heart. He was playing new solos. And the people around me were like, why isn't he playing the thing on the record? Why is Ronnie improvising? Why are these solos happening? And they hadn't really been to very many real shows, I think. And I think that's the other things. People have gone to fewer and fewer shows. And I'm like, what do you mean? They've always done this. They've always improvised. They've always done new stuff live. That's why we're seeing them live. And then I was there with a friend, and he wasn't wrong to think this, but he was like, well, I thought Alice Cooper had the better show. I'm like, Alice Cooper had a great stage show. Him and his band did not sound very good, though, in my opinion. And it's not, his voice sounded pretty beat up, and the musicians he was with were not bad, but they weren't great. They played okay as a band. It's the difference. Like, it's the difference between seeing a band like, Dimmu Borgir versus High on Fire. High on Fire, it's three guys that go out and they just play music for you, and it blasts your freaking face off. Dimmu Borgir goes out, it's all like pre-tracked, pre-recorded stuff. Like, they got click tracks in their ears, and you get none of that with High on Fire. It's just raw, right? They're plugged in, physically plugged in with cords to their amps. It's old school, and I love it. And that's why I love Black Sabbath. To your point, they had been listening to pre-recorded music for so long and had seen so little live music, they didn't know what live music was supposed to sound like. They thought it was supposed to sound like a 24-track multi-recorded $1 million record that the band puts out for you to get through on the radio. They didn't know what live music was supposed to sound like, so it ruined their expectations. They thought music was supposed to sound the same every night. They thought everything was supposed to be the same as it was on the record, and that any deviation from that would be bad. So yes, they've been ruined by hearing it. Their perceptions are totally warped. And it's the same thing. It's going to be the same thing with like Baroque music or seeing a live play. Things go wrong, and that's not what you focus on. You focus on the things that are really right, the connection with the audience. Ronnie was out there like giving everything to the audience and really connecting with people and wanting that feedback from a live audience. And I've seen bands that, it's why I don't go to a lot of metal shows, is like I see so many bands that they just are not with the audience. They're playing with a click track and they just are going through the motions and trying to sound like their record, because they know that they'll get trashed online. Someone's recording them. And if they make a mistake, if they deviate, if they play a solo and they maybe bork a note or something, that's going to be all over the internet. It's going to be all over TikTok or Instagram or whatever about someone missing a note here or there. So they mime their performances. The Eagles mime their performances. And they get caught for it because people can record it. But I know why they do it is because if they went out there and sounded even a little bit off from their heyday, people would trash them online. The criticism for that is like exponentially higher, and people are not used to live music. Now, the other part of that, have headphones ruined hearing ability? Yes. A mix for headphones is not the same as a mix for stereo speakers. And here's why. When you have headphones on, you're hearing 100%. That's not really how you hear things in a three-dimensional space. You hear things bleeding over. So the proper way to listen to a stereo recording is with stereo speakers and not headphones. I'll just get that out of the way. And there are certain bands that it's actually off-putting to listen to them with headphones. And Slayer is a great example. Slayer will track, it'll be Jeff Hanneman in one ear and Kerry King in the other ear. And so you're hearing... Now, if you hear two speakers like this, that sounds amazing. You hear it like this, and it's almost disorienting to hear it like that. So first of all, headphones were invented so that you could hear things in spaces that you needed isolation. Libraries or loud venues and things like that. That's why stereophones were invented. And they're great. They're great for that purpose. So it's ruined their hearing ability because they're not used to hearing how music is supposed to sound. But the fact that everybody's using headphones has a reflexive effect on the way people produce music, which is, and I do it myself, I don't do a lot of wide stereo tracking because it'll sound weird in a headphone mix. So everything is stereo tracked, but fairly close to the center field, because I know from feedback from other people, they put those headphones on and things don't sound right. It sounds weird to hear like just reverb in one channel, whereas that would sound amazing. Like, Van Halen's stuff sounds amazing on stereos, but they hated it at the time because they wanted things more center tracked. And it's true, if you listen to it with headphones, it'll sound weird. You'll hear like Eddie in one ear and you'll hear Michael Anthony in the other ear, and it just sounds weird. But even worse than headphones, well, your Apple earbuds are not capable of delivering a very wide dynamic range. They're quiet. They're not loud. So because they're not loud, what do you have to do? You have to make your mixes as loud as possible. You have to make them be perceived as loud. And if they don't, people will have your song come on in the Spotify list and they're like, why did the volume drop out? I can't hear this. Because they've been blasted with things that are as close to 0 dB constantly as possible. They're ultra compressed, ultra maximized, they're run through a limiter, they're EQ'd to get this huge spike at like 1500 hertz so that everything sounds really loud. And it's called the Loudness Wars, and you can look it up on YouTube. There's a lot of great videos on it. But those little earbuds, I blame for that because they didn't go very loud. And then you had all kinds of safety things in the US that prevented you from driving real headphones that would sound good. Okay. To drive these are, how many ohms are these? These are like, actually these ones are only 80 ohms. So these are 80 ohm headphones. There's ones that are 250 ohms. The classic COS stereophones that sound amazing. They're like 250 ohms. So the impedance is a lot. You got to have a powerful headphone amp to drive these. Why is the impedance so high? Well, Koss designed them to be plugged into really hot amplifier equipment from the 60s and 70s. So your phone, it doesn't have enough power to drive good headphones, which means you're not going to have balanced sound. You're not going to be able to hear classical music, for example, on your headphones very well. Because they're quiet, people mix everything louder. Because people mix everything louder, we have safety requirements in the US that prevent you from actually getting the maximum volume out of your phone. Or like, for example, people were buying these Walkmans, these Sony Walkmans. The ones from Japan, they didn't have that requirement. So you could actually use real headphones on them and they would sound amazing. But in the US, they had a maximum output level. Now, the output level would vary depending on the impedance of the headphones, right? So the only way to hear your music would be to plug in really shitty headphones into your Walkman and listen to music that was heavily compressed and maximized that would give you a headache and also deafen you. So it's one of those things that, like, the regulations didn't do what anybody set out to do, and they just made music worse as a response. So everything's bad because of the iPod. Everything's bad because of the little iPod headphones. Those earbuds have killed the quality of music, and you will know it. If you're to come out and hang out on my patio with my hi-fi, and I can just stream something off Amazon on the hi-fi, and you'd be like, this is the best thing I've ever heard. And you're like, yeah. Why doesn't it sound as good on my phone? Because modern consumer audio is shit. It's complete shit. That's why. I have a great pair of Sony headphones, Bluetooth headphones. They're the best Bluetooth headphones that I have heard on the market. They still don't sound as good as this plugged into an old headphone amp. They don't sound as good as my hi-fi on the patio. They don't sound as good as my hi-fi in the other room, even though it's plugged in like a theater speakers sound better. But like my old 1960s hi-fi is like, wow, it sounds so much better. Why does it sound bad? It's not like, here's a Class A Macintosh tube amp. It's a cheap receiver. The speakers are good. That's why. The speakers are high quality. And then if I put an actual record on, like let's put on a Frank Sinatra record, you'd be like, I thought old recordings sounded like crap, but this is really loud and beautiful and balanced, and it sounds great. It's like, yeah, this was pressed in 1955 or whatever, and it sounds amazing. Why? Because our audio equipment was better in the past. Because we were trying to microtize everything. Everything's centered around this little telepathy device. And it's destroyed the quality of recorded music. So that's my rant. That's my rant for that. All right, let's read a few more things. This is true too with the shift to What do you think about Brandon Sanderson finishing Wheel of Time? Well, in that case, I believe that he had been chosen to do that. Like, oh my gosh, who wrote Wheel of Time? Robert Jordan. Robert Jordan's a pen name, by the way. He had actually picked Sanderson to finish it because he knew the end was near. So that's a little different than Kentaro Miura suddenly dies and then some friends are going to finish it off. It's mostly like the business would really like it if we finished off the story, and it's okay. But let's just regard it as at a lower level. It's not Kentaro Miura at that point. It's really fan fiction trying to finish the story for the sake of the fans. You know, it's a lower level. Any chance you could do a video on post-romantic art? Absolutely. I love post-romantic art. I'm not an expert. What I should do is I should get Jesse White in, and we should do a little stream on post-romantic art. So maybe I'll ask him to stop by this week or next week, and we can do a little stream on post-romantic art. Relayer is what happens when you take Close to the Edge overboard. Yep. We're all veterans of the loudness wars. The best live experience for me was probably 2008 when 3 opened for Prog Nation. I was 16 and Dream Theater was my favorite band, fresh off. I've seen Dream Theater. They're great live. They're very tight, but I do think they pursue the sound of the album. I don't think they're evil for doing that. I think that's the expectation of the audience, and they're meeting that expectation. But personally, maybe it'll be like a lost talent. When you go see something like Government Mule is still touring, and I need to go see them. Go see Government Mule. Go see on the metal side, go see High on Fire. See some of these bands that play in the old school manner. It's just different. It's a different energy level. It's so much better. Like there's such better connection. It feels there's a much bigger emotional response for me than something that's backtracked to infinity and has like click tracks and stuff. Even if it's a great band like something like Winter Sun, if it's a highly click tracked experience, it just feels sterile, versus a band grooving with each other. I started mixing and mastering with my studio speakers. It's made all the difference. Yeah, I do it with live monitors. They're good monitors. They're PreSonus monitors. They're okay. They're not the best that you could get, but they're really good for the amount of money I spent on them. And they're really loud, which you don't need studio monitors to be loud, but generally the louder they are, the easier it is to get into a good reference volume where you can clearly hear everything without the speakers distorting or anything like that. They have a lot of headroom on the speaker side. Was improvisation less popular before the phonograph? That's a good question. It seems like people would have wanted more consistency in live performances back then because there were no recordings. So I think it's actually the opposite. I think recordings have made people more expectant of things being the same. But the main form of music that had improvisation in it was jazz, and that really rose up with the phonograph. But lots of jazz acts like Benny Goodman, the players would play canned solos. They play the same solo every night because the audience knew, they were familiar with the song from the phonograph, or from it's actually a gramophone. I know we say phonograph. The phonograph is a cylinder. The gramophone record. They'd be familiar with it from the gramophone, and they'd want to hear that same solo every night. So canned solos go way back as well. I think we have these reactive movements. Like the point of bebop was to get away from that polished, canned solos, everything highly arranged, kind of big band sound. Bring it down, get it into a simpler, smaller group that's really about the interaction between the players and shredding, playing really complicated stuff. That's what bebop was about. Another reason to hate Apple, I'll take it, yeah. Does having a lot of music education tend to ruin the ability to enjoy simpler types of music like folk? I like folk music, so I don't think it's ruined mine. It just depends on you as an individual. I think even without music education, people who love complex music will gravitate towards that and learn more about it. So I've known people that aren't musically inclined, but they listen to like prog rock and they listen to dense stuff, let's say. And they don't like folk music and pop music, right? Like one of the reasons I pursued music was and music education is I didn't like pop music ever. I never liked pop music. There's never a point in my life where pop music was acceptable to me. So even with zero music education, I never enjoyed it. But I do enjoy folk music. My dude, you're familiar with the Three, right? Joey Eppert's acoustic slap was the coolest thing. I haven't checked in with them in many years, but they're the best opener ever. I've never seen... Anyway, all right. That's 45 minutes of lecture. What do we want to do creatively today? I can do a couple of takes. Let me show you this document. Let me see if I can show you this document. Yeah. Boom. I may have to like move this thing around here. Okay. Yeah. Look at this Ableton document. It's pretty crazy. Let me pause the music here. Let me pause the music here and we'll take a look at what I've got going on here. Yeah. All right. So here's my crazy document. Oh, I have the other camera on. Hello. I don't know why I have the other camera on, but there it is. Hold on. Here we go. There we go. All right. Yeah, I have, check this out. Hi. Can you see I'm wearing like short gym shorts? see my gray locks there. Okay. Yeah. All right. So here's a document. It's a little crazy. There's a lot going on here. Yeah. A lot of tracks. Oh, just wait till you feel the rawness of Deacon Kind soon. I love it. Buy some more Deacon Kind shirts. See, I don't really like older types of pop music either. I'm not big into Neil Diamond. I like some, I don't hate ABBA, but definitely anything, most of the music, say post 1990 pop music, I'm not a fan of. I think pop music started to drop off a cliff, and it really dropped off a cliff in 1997. Like it went from acceptable, like Ace of Base, kind of not much to it, but it's okay, to like Spice Girls horseshit garbage. 1997 was the last year that there was any good pop music. I feel like there's probably been some good stuff, but just in general, we're talking in generalities. All right. So let me shrink this down. Maybe you can see all these crazy tracks. Okay. This is the document. You can't even like see all of it. Hold on. Half-Life Alyx. I got that. I'm going to play some Half-Life Alyx. I should do that live. Yeah. Let's see here. Maybe I can move this around a little bit. Can I shrink this? Man, it's kind of hard to shrink it. Anyway, it goes all the way across my 4K monitor. That's how big this nastiness is. All right. All right, now you can see some of these tracks. Let's plug in a guitar. What guitar shall I plug in today? Do we want Parker Fly, or do we want the Les Paul? Let's do the Les Paul. I also have a cool hollow body guitar I got, a Godin. And Daryl, if Jerry's looking for a hollow body, a new hollow body, should definitely check out the Godins. I got one. They are killer. The Godin Fifth Avenue hollow body is like, you can get them for cheap, man, and they're Canadian made. They're really good. Whereas like all of Gretsch's stuff is made in Japan. Not that Japan is bad, but like it's not made in America anymore. And most of their stuff is made in China. Like they're cheaper Gretsch's. I was like seeing all these Gretsch's on like Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, man, who bought all these Gretsch's? And I realized that they were like the cheap Chinese ones. I'm like, oh no. All right, let's take a listen to. Let's demo some stuff. Let's have a little fun. Let me show you this document. So I'm going to do this 4-movement kind of improv symphony. I could do some takes of it now. We could try it out a little bit, but let's take a listen to this guitar. Hopefully it's coming through. I'll turn up the monitors a bit. When did pop music really start? 70s or 60s or 50s? I'd probably say 40s. Pop music is just popular music, so it goes along with the gramophone. Got some Amazon packages. All right, let's take a look at this Les Paul. Beautiful blue flame. You got to catch it in the right light, just right. Gorgeous guitar. Let's tune up. Here's how I tune up with this thing. Press the button. There it goes. It's tuning up. I can check it. It's pretty. Oh, you can't see the tuner. Yeah, the tuner's off the side of the screen, but yeah. Let's do it again. The D is very slightly off. colors. I forgot. They go in like the opposite direction from what you think. You want to hear some grit? Pretty good guitar. A little grit. So that's on track 2 here, and we can kind of go through. So the way that it's set up is like a clean sound. Then we have some with a little bit of grit in case we want to go that route. We get a little more sustained, so for like slower lines. And then this is no amp. Now the reason I have... That's what it sounds like with no amp. It still sounds good with no amp, surprisingly. You know? Actually, it still sounds fine with no amp. This is no amp sim or anything. No cab sim. Actually, it sounds pretty good without an amp sim. I have this set up because, yeah. Because I'm running my Enzo. You can't see it right now. Let me get another camera here. Hold on. Let's see here. Let's turn that on. Okay. Boom. Welcome. Here it is. The Enzo. Go through some. It's a little synthesizer in a box. How cool is that? Yeah, so get a little synth in a box going on here. It even tracks bends, which is just insane, but it tracks bends. It can even track your voice. We could try this real quick. I don't know if it would work. Bum, 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 da 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 dum. All right, yeah, we just changed the input here to 1. No, that won't work. I'd have, because I have this ad running as an external thing. I actually can't do that. But yeah, I can track your voice if you wanted it to. All right, you tell Jerry about... let me go get the hollow body. I'll show it off real quick. It's a good guitar. Yeah, let me show you a couple sounds from this. So here's some poly sounds. And I have another one here. It says swells no amp. This has a bunch of time effects on it that you can see, including like a little hot tube saturator here that just will really fill up these synths. And just have this beautiful kind of pad sound. I've had so much fun playing with the synthesizer. You could use it with a violin. You could use it with a clarinet. There's like a YouTube harp player that used it with her harp. Now, I can even do something cool here too. I could turn on the mix. So let me get it about, say, 50%. So it's tracking all those notes, believe it or not. And I can get, there we go. Sorry. I knocked the mic out. Knock the mic out. Okay. Let me find my document that has some of these things in it. Oh, here it is. So I have like some chords and stuff written out. So this middle movement has this it has this rotating through all of these chords that are happening simultaneously. It's a technique that I've kind of developed myself for this sort of music, which is kind of it's a weird thing to do, but let's check out some of the stuff we have here. Let's try 15. Oh, this one's cool. Little noise in that. So you can get some cool sounds there. And 44. Now you can actually use this as a multi-effect pedal. Tracking's pretty fast. Some cool sounds. Let's try some swells. 51. I couldn't tell what I was writing there. I must have my glasses off. That's a cool one. Let's see what we got here. Arctic. Swells. Hold on. Let's go on this one here. Brass. Some notes on like turning the mix down. Something slow. You can even do this with an amp. The amp tends to like really emphasize the treble on this in a way that I don't like, but you can, if you... You can just kind of like a little pad background for what you're doing. Let's see what else I got here. I should see what's going on in the chat because I'm not paying attention to the chat. Every time I see David Zuul, I think of Hussar Zuul from Conan. All right. Yeah, I like the moody dry intervals. What's dry intervals? Ooh. Do not like. Here's the next one. This one's called Dreamy Chords, and they do sound dreamy. I'm going to use these for something, I think. Really nice. I even turn up a little glide sound, and you get this kind of cool. One. very cool stuff. There's a brass one here. Boy, that's a big sound, isn't it? Let's see. I like this for a swell here. Sound. I'm doing all that with the volume pedal, by the way. It's nothing like complicated. There's another one I like. Salton Sea. Great for this kind of floaty stuff that I do in the backgrounds. So like I could record something here, and let's maybe do that. Solo on top of it. Lost the pick again. Probably hear the click track going because I have the mic on. But if I kill the mic, then you won't hear that annoying click. And so forth. It's a little better if you're not hearing that click blinging away. Help me keep track of all the various stuff that's going on. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Sounds incredible through my car speakers. Awesome. I can do the setup that I'm running all of this stuff using Ableton, and then it's going to OBS using Restream, a free plugin from the makers of Reaper. So it'll let you stream audio like to other applications, and so that's what I have it set up to do. So it's streaming all the stuff that I have here, across to. But if you look at my document here, what I've got going on is basically the piece is going to work so that we're going from left to right. So first movement is all going to be these guitar sounds, and it's all going to be minimalism. That's what I have planned. So it'll be all minimalist stuff. That'll be, over again, and then, or even. So it's going to be minimalist, like Steve Reich kind of stuff. That'll fade out by the time we get to the drone sound. Let me show you what the drone sound sounds like. And I can actually do the drone with like a synth here, like this. So that when we track that just becomes this kind of background wash, and I'll let you hear what that ends up kind of sounding like as a wash. Ignore the click track for now. foot switch to close the loop. So then we have this kind of loop going in the background, and then we can build some stuff on top of that. Now we need to be in a... There's E. Let me do it over here. Build up with some synth stuff. Turn off that annoying click. Kind of let the reverb fade away. Let me show you some other interesting stuff in this document real quick. So over on this side, let me pull these open so you can see them. There are 5 different send channels that I have set up here to do various effects. So number 1 is this cathedral reverb. So this is a cathedral reverb that uses 2 different samples and from 2 different cathedrals to give a sense of space. So, if we hit play here, let's turn off that. Maybe you can just hear the reverb from that, or this is kind of happening in the background, Turn that off for now. So that's our cathedral background, just kind of giving extra space to what's going on. And then let's turn that off for now. Then I have a delay going on here. So the delay, it's kind of a 2-channel delay with different, the delay being offset by different beats depending on what channel it's on. So we have a 5, a 2, and a 3. So you can hear like it fills up a lot of space. That's feeding back into the reverb, and I can even turn up that send. Then I have a resonator. So this is just to give a little bit extra dimension to some of the frequencies that are there. So there's a resonator here. This is the Paris resonator. It sounds very weird if you hear it by itself. It doesn't really sound like anything. This would be like barely there. I have it turned up for some of the tracks that I really want them to get this kind of resonant sound, like this. So it's kind of an unequal resonance of some of the pitches. There's a shimmer reverb here. This is actually done through Amplitude. Let me show you what I'm doing over this. Okay, this is what it looks like. So I have it split. These are Leslie rotating speakers, and they're running basically an emulation of the Blue Sky reverb, which I have as a physical pedal, but this works fine. So I'm just going to use this. This thing works fine. Okay. Can I edit this? So yeah, you could play around with this. I have just like a Fender cab, Silverface cab, and then there it is. Blue Day, it's the same as Blue Sky. It's a shimmer reverb. It sounds cool. So I have that. And then the last one is a vector delay. Let me move this over so you can see what the hell this looks like. It looks really weird. Okay, there it is. Boom, 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 boom. So I can reset it. And there's a chance element to this that's creating all kinds of delay sounds. So I'll crank it up for this channel and you can hear how weird it sounds. Oh wait, I have the wrong one on. Hold on. you go. So most of the amp VSTs, by the way, Obscure, they're just the ones that are built into Ableton or Ableton. They're the built-in ones. They sound exactly like the Poolin amp pack that I had back in the day. That sounds great, especially for clean playing. You don't need a really hefty VST. You just don't. Especially if you're running a lot of effects, it just becomes less important. It becomes more important, I think, if you're doing high gain stuff. And Amplitube actually does a really good job with the high gain stuff as well. Do you have to have Reaper to use the plugin? No. Nope. The plugins are VST plugins. They will work with any, it'll work with Pro Tools or Logic. They'll work with anything that uses VSTs. The Reaper, it's called Restream. But it's part of a pack. There's also like a free compressor that you can get. Works great. But yeah, that's what the vector delay sounds like. A little aleatoric. I love it. It's super cool, and I have it cranked on certain ones that I just really like that extra level of aleatoric craziness. Most of the stuff is in the background, so it's providing kind of this like soupy, resonant background to like everything that's going on. And you don't want to go crazy with this because it can get overboard really quickly. Anyway, let me show you this hollow body, since maybe Daryl's here still. He might be interested in the hollow body because we used to play rockabilly together. So yeah, let me go grab that. I'll be right back. Creep in with this thing. All right. There we go. Dropping picks all over the floor. Halkia says hi, Daryl, if you're still here. Let's take a look at this guitar. Boom. All right, let's look at it over here. Yeah. You can see it. It's a beautiful guitar. All right, so this is a Godin. Now let me hear you. You can actually just hear the acoustics on it are pretty good. Make sure I'm not blasting it too hard. Sounds pretty good just as an acoustic. Okay, it sounds pretty good. All right, let's take that off the solo. There we go. Let's do clean. Let's hear some clean sounds. Sure this is plugged in. No robo tuners. You have to actually tune this one. Not as hot. Uh-oh. Out there. What is a blue alert? Can you stop? Thank you.
Blue alert. Suspect is Benjamin Song.
Oh my goodness, you're still talking.
Song is a 32-year-old Asian male last seen in Alvarado, Texas. Call the Federal Bureau of Investigation tip line with information. If seen, call 911.
It's still talking. It's still talking. Okay. Thank you. I didn't need that. I'm at home streaming. All right. Now I'm having trouble seeing myself, so maybe I need to fix this. Properties. All right. Let's go to configure video. There we go. Let's just give ourselves a little more gain, huh? There we go. Now we can see it. All right. Boom. Beautiful red color. Gorgeous red color. You may not be able to see it too good on that camera, but there's a flame to the top. It's made out of cherry wood, which is great. Yeah, I thought it was a weather warning. We get those because we've got an aerial flood warning right now. But yeah, this has like a cool cherry top. There's a maple neck, and it's a flame maple neck, but you can't really see it in this camera in this lighting because I don't have like really bright studio lighting on. I guess I could turn this up, but you get in a lot of shadows. See, you can see it kind of down here. Did I lose a connection here? What happened here? Is this not connecting right? What's the problem here? Not quite as hot as the Gibson, even though it has these PAF styles. These are a little bit more TV Jones-ish. Actually, probably want a different sound for jazz, huh? That's a good little mellow jazz sound. Alright, I have that vector delay cranked. That's going to make it sound a little weird. I want just kind of like a really nice... Yeah. I'll turn off just a little bit. Really great sounds for a lot of stuff, but it still can get kind of barky, you know. Even though I kind of barky rockabilly tone. If you really want it. Do some cool different effects with this guy too. Do need to put some felt behind here for the Bixby because it's you get a lot of back ringing. You get a lot of back ringing with this one, so I need to put a little dampening here. Let's see what it sounds like with some swells. Beautiful. It's perfect. And let's do one of these with like a low mix. So check this out. Some cool effects there. Let's get that mix. Yeah, let's try back around here. This guy. All right. Here we go. Here's a cool mix. What a weird nostalgic sound. There you go. A fun little improvised piece. For posterity, for fun. Fun there. I'm starting to run out of time, I think. I've been goofing around here so much. But it's fun. There's even arpeggio stuff. Like you can do... Hang on, let me get this sound. Yeah. Let's see if I can find one that's got like a mix on it. That's not it. I don't like that. Well, I could use that for like a game sound design or something. Weird stuff here. I found one that had some cool arpeggios that I thought was cool. Weird sounds. Some of that's just too much. A lot of these are just not useful really at all. So anyway, but still it's a very cool synthesizer. So I dig it for that reason. Even without an amp, this sounds pretty good. There it goes. almost like an acoustic guitar. This kind of, let's get the sound over here, you know, this. A little too, like, sparkly. Kind of TV Jones sound. There it is. I have to dust off the switch. Sometimes these switches in the hollow bodies get dusty, and you have to try to get in there and blow out the dust. There it is, yeah. All right, so there's that song. There's that guitar. Let me show you how I'll put it together a little bit. So we can do a few takes or take a look at whatever here, or we can write a little bit for our last few minutes. It doesn't matter to me. That's this guitar. It's the Godin. It's the Godin. I can't see it that good. Let me hold on. Let's try this one. You can see that a little better. Maybe in the light you can see some of the flaming. It has a really beautiful flame on the top. You have to kind of there it is. You can kind of catch the quilting in the top. There, very pretty. And there's actually, like, the neck is a flame maple neck. You probably can't catch the flames in this light, but there's a flame maple neck too, which is pretty cool. Where's this last spray? There it goes. Very cool guitars, especially for the price. All right. Okay, should we maybe do a little bit of practice with this crazy document, or should we write a little bit? I feel like most people, doesn't matter. I feel like the music's more entertaining than listening to keys clacking, but I do need to get to those books at some point, so I spent a lot of time talking. Just talking. All right, good program. Can anyone recommend a good program other than OBS for streaming video to Discord? Everyone I've tried, including Discord's built-in option, introduces mild stuttering into the video. So I haven't tried too many other options for that. There's lots of ones that they do it through the web page itself, and oops, here I am, and that tends to work better, I think, for those applications. But OBS, the reason I like it is I could control all these things. I could have something that's like this going on, you know, I can do all kinds of crazy stuff. But if you're just looking to like stream gameplay or a camera, I don't know. There's probably simpler ways to do it. If you're getting a lot of stuttering, it could be some of your settings or something else that doesn't have a lot to do with OBS itself. So keep that in mind. Yeah. So anyway, it's a cool hollow body guitar. I got a deal on it. Put some flat wound strings on it, which I like because there's no string noise. My quest for flat wound strings for the classical was really like remembering these. You know, they're like violin strings, so they don't squeak. There's none of this like squeak. So you don't get as much of that, you know. You don't get a whole lot of that string noise, which is really great. And I think that's great for recording. It makes a little darker instrument, but I kind of like that. For jazz, at least. So anyway, cool guitar. Definitely cool guitar. All right. Yeah, let's take a look at some... We can take a look at some writing stuff. This is what I have in mind to do with this crazy document. It's going to be a long thing. So I've been working on the document. That's why there hasn't been that much Zool stuff, is that I want to have this set up so that all my improv... Like to do a whole hour of improvisation without falling flat on your face and making it sound like shit at some point it's really challenging. You know, it's a big challenge, especially when I want to do stuff where I'm like transitioning between keys. Like there's so many opportunities for mistakes when you're upping the complexity. Every layer of complexity you add, you know, increases your likelihood of making mistakes by, you know, that much more. All right, let's see what we were working on. I do need to actually do some of the revisions for Prince of Dusk, because I want to put that one out. So that's something else that I wanted to do live. But I just wanted a break from, like, you know, focusing so much on writing. I have a lot of joy from playing guitar and stuff, so. And yeah, I've really enjoyed playing this guitar. I got my Parker Fly. I probably do the piece on the Parker Fly because it's what it is. You know, I'll probably do the improv piece on the Parker Fly. Let's get some music going. That's too loud. Here we go. All right. Here it is. Ah, here they are.
This is how to get in shape. This. If you want to
On ad.
Start eating more of these. Start eating more of these.
On ad. Okay. All right. Oh, I have a crazy camera on. Hold on. You're seeing me from a way weird angle. There we go. All right. All right. There we go. Okay. The Rerunning Man is just like the original book, so that means we should automatically like it over Arnold's movie, courtesy of YouTube comment sections. I think, I don't know. The Running Man story is pretty different from the story from the movie. I think I like the movie better.
Without the ones like you working tirelessly to keep things running.
And another ad. Another ad.
Granger's here for you with professionals.
Oh, it's an ad for Granger.
Granger.com or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, this is not me. It totally... Look, it's this guy playing this harp guitar. This is rad. Check this guy out. He's playing a Frank Sinatra cover with like a little thumb pick and like some artificial harmonics here and these big harp strings. Very cool. But I don't want to get copyright claimed, which is what's going to happen. So we're gonna not watch the whole thing. But it's cool. Looks like this guy is doing something cool. You know, with this nice scenery. He might be miming. In fact, I'm positive that he actually is miming this performance because there's no microphone. Where's the microphone? Right? Here, hold on. Let me turn on the volume. Never mind. He has like a pickup. So the pickup must be running somewhere. It's probably it might be a live performance, but I'm not seeing where it's going. Like, it's just him alone. This is a great view, right? But I'm not seeing what this is hooked up to. Am I crazy? These cool contraptions. So he's probably just like miming over something he recorded, but it sounds cool. Very cool. If he's watching, he's like, I'm not miming. I hit all the cables and I'm actually playing it, and you know, it's great. So it sounds cool. Fine. All these mismatched tuners. This one's missing pegs. Like, these are like banjo pegs, maybe. I don't know what the hell's going on with this crazy guitar. Anyway, I'll pick up some more of my music because my music is royalty free. You can listen to it on stream to your heart's content. Yeah, here's me from 2023. All right. Okay. I need to start like dyeing my hair. The musical score for the new Superman movie is out. I listened to some of it. I think it sounds cheap and pretty bad. It's all digital, no orchestra. It uses the Williams theme. Ooh, but not very well. Listen to your discussion on tuning. I once heard Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata on a period pianoforte. It was gorgeous and quite otherworldly. I like the sound of a real pianoforte more than a modern piano. The tone is better. It's more interesting. The tone changes with the range of the instrument. A modern piano sounds very sterile by comparison, and the tone of a pianoforte will change as you hit the keys more aggressively, so it becomes brighter as well as louder. It's really cool. It's a very very cool instrument. I just really wish we could hear it more. I tend to get really bored of the sound of a Steinway. Steinways sound great, not knocking Steinways or anyone who plays piano, but you get kind of monotoned into oblivion. It's just one tone for an entire concert. It's too much. Whereas like a solo violinist, like who did my wife take me to see? Josh Bell. He was great. You could produce so many different tones with a violin or a guitar or even a brass instrument or something. So once you are combining those, like a string quartet can produce a lot of color, and a woodwind quintet can produce a lot of different color, but a solo piano an organ could produce a lot of color, but the solo piano is one color. And if you're just bored of that color, there's nothing for it. It's just that one color. Pianoforte, there's just more going on with it. I like it better. I've heard rumors of a possible Indiana Jones and Shawshank Redemption remakes. Unfortunately, now I know the film industry is stupid enough to try it. Why would you remake Shawshank Redemption? It's a full-color movie, legendary actors. It's like pretty close to a perfect movie. Why would you remake that? The answer is because it's easier to get people to see that than to see something new. Figured out as much. Most new movie scores sound bland and forgettable like that. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Why didn't they do it for Superman? That's a good question. They could probably afford it. It's probably not a matter of not affording it, you know? I'm realizing we're now out of time. I need to go eat and take care of that stuff. But I appreciate everyone hanging out with me. Kind of finished up that scene, and then I'll do some more maybe on Friday. Okay. So thanks for hanging out with me and checking out some guitars. And yeah, appreciate the super chat as always. And I'll check you all next time. Wait, my music died. No, wait, no. It's just a transition to another piece. Here I am. Here I am. Scavenged stone. Rick Beato hanging out right here. Showing you how to play Outshine on a lovely PRS. My friend Mason in college had one like this, the same color with like the birds. It's a gorgeous instrument. I've always wanted one, but I can never get a deal on one. You know? Only reason I have a Les Paul is like I got such a good deal on it, I couldn't really pass it up. It's a great instrument. They just are never like affordable for me. That's all. PRSs, I mean, and Gibsons. I've owned Gibsons in the past, but like they always migrate away from me because I just, it's too much value in like an instrument when I can get the same thing for less, I guess. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with that Les Paul though. I think I'm going to keep it for sure. It's a great sound. Thanks for listening to the playing. I appreciate it. My little improvisation. All right. Take it easy, folks. I'll see you all next time. you.